My voice has been feeling a little off today, and I almost waited until tomorrow to record this. But I've been drinking water, and I'm feeling a little better, and I just honestly want to get this done so that I can just be done with Metal Gear Solid 2 and move on to Metal Gear Solid 3. And also, there's always that guy on YouTube who says, like, oh, I'm sick this week, and I probably sound super different, and he sounds the exact same. So I might not even sound different to you, even though I feel different to me. My voice, it feels like it's like trapped up higher, like more nasally than usual. But yeah, it's gotten better since I started drinking water, and I've already done a few takes of this particular MP3, just trying to get things right. And it's breaking in. Maybe I was just dehydrated. I had a Japanese language test today, and I have barely slept. That might be a factor too, actually, but not important. Based on the timing of when this MP3 was made, it is possible you will be waiting to hear if I say anything about Metal Gear Solid Delta, so I'll bring that up early and say that I don't have much to say. Right now, we only have the initial reveal trailer that just shows Snake's face. I have been very critical of remakes lately, especially the Resident Evil 4 remake, which I dislike very much. I am cautiously curious about Delta. I said before there was no way I was going to play it, but I did kind of have like the Resident Evil 4 remake fresh in my mind. And once I actually looked at the trailer, I mean, I see how... Well, it was a combination of looking at the trailer and also starting to play Snake Eater. Well, technically I'm playing Metal Gear Solid 3 Subsistence, but people still call that Snake Eater, right? But yeah, that's... 3, like 2, has some very serious growing pains in terms of like the controls and stuff. I will save that for my Metal Gear Solid 3 video. I don't want to get into the details of that, but yeah. I could see how a remake of 3 could be interesting. Are Konami the guys to do it? No fucking idea. The initial reveal did not repulse me like the Resident Evil 4 art style always has, the remake art style. But we'll see. I'm not saying I'm optimistic. I'm just curious. So we'll see how that goes. Maybe I'll talk about Delta again in the Snake Eater video, or maybe I'll wait. And I've been thinking about making an MP3 about remakes and talking about Resident Evil 1 on GameCube, the Resident Evil 4 remake, Pokemon Fire Red and Soul Silver. I know there's another one. Oh, the Twin Snakes, obviously. And then, of course, Metal Gear Solid Delta. It's a lot of research, but it will be interesting. So something to think about. Maybe it's a side gig if this remake thing keeps going, which it seems very likely that it will. Seems very likely that it will. Anyway, yeah. Metal Gear Solid 2. My main takeaway from Metal Gear Solid 2 is that it is kind of a mixed bag for me. I think I like the first one more. I wrote in my notes that I liked a smaller percentage of Metal Gear Solid 2. That may or may not be true. I think that might be true. But yeah, we'll go over some of the differences here. I do not regret the time that I spent with Metal Gear Solid 2 at all. It was a net positive. I like this game. It is complete fucking nonsense that does not have much unambiguous meaning. I think that's fine. I think that is just kind of Kojima's style. And a lot of times I don't dig it, but there is that one, every once in a while, there's that occasional guy who can just make me like it. And yeah, Metal Gear Solid is one of them. I know there's another one, another really important example that I just can't think of right now. I'll come back to that, I guess. I almost said Kinoko Nasu, the guy who writes the Fate franchise. But a lot of my enjoyment of Fate is like shitting on it while I'm watching it. Except for Zero. Zero's actually good, but you know, Fate Stay Night, and all the other Fate shit. what I've seen of Grand Order and Apocrypha, which is not much. Generally, Nasu shit sucks, and I just like shitting on it. But it's still fun to watch. Metal Gear's not like that. Metal Gear is like batshit, and it doesn't make any sense. And there really is not actually some deep holistic meaning to it. But it's still fun. It's not usually the kind of story that I prefer, but I really enjoy the tone that Kojima creates, and yeah. And so in that sense, Metal Gear Solid 2, it's not so big a departure from Metal Gear Solid 1, I don't think. People think that Metal Gear Solid 2 was some like crazy, divergent wackiness, but it really is just Metal Gear Solid 1 further realized, I think. It really feels like the same tone to me, where some people will probably say it's completely different. Well, I mean, like, okay, so the tone is a little different, but it's a similar concept, I guess you might say. The concept of Metal Gear Solid 2 is very similar, in where it's just a bunch of insane nonsense. It has some interesting themes sprinkled in there that you can interpret. You can kind of like project whatever you think is interesting onto the themes, and many people have done that quite consistently. But yeah, I am irritated by the discussions about Metal Gear Solid 2, because people are way too fucking hung up on how Metal Gear Solid 2 predicted that the world's superpowers would use technology to oppress the civilian population. Like, well, yeah, no shit. Who'd have fucking thought, right? Like, it's... And don't get me wrong, like, I mean, the game was kind of forward-thinking in that regard, but it's like... it's all anybody wants to fucking talk about, man. It's crazy. Of course, I guess what I'm saying now is kind of muddy. I'm not, like, taking away the fact that the game does say some very insightful things about what technological oppression will look like. I totally get that. But people get so hung up on that shit. At least in the YouTube algorithm, I should say. I mean, if you, like... Well, I watched Matt's video on this as well, Matthew Matosis. I watched his Metal Gear Solid 2 video. I do not have any direct responses to anything that he said. His video is one of the rare beacons of light where actually interesting things are being said about Metal Gear Solid 2. And not like, like rolling CNN footage side by side with the fucking Colonel's monologue at the end and all that retarded shit. So yeah, I mean, Metal Gear Solid's not special in that sense. Any popular IP is going to have a horrible YouTube community because YouTube is horrible. But yeah. Anyway, as far as like the body of this of my notes here, I do have 3 like super bullets that I want to talk about. 1 is tone and technology, 2 is mechanics, and 3 is story and characters. So let's get started with tone and technology here. Regarding the technology, obviously, the game looks very good. It looks awesome, actually. Yeah, the graphics just look awesome. Even nowadays, it just looks great, even though it runs on the PS2. Definitely one of the better-looking PS2 games, I think. I don't know. I'm sure some fucking contrarian who knows the library better than I do would have something to say about that. But either way, it looks good. Looks good. The tech is very good. The control systems are very robust. I'll talk about that more in the mechanics, though. But it definitely, like, every aspect of this game gives a strong impression of it being more robust, more feature-packed, higher resolution. Definitely a consistent technical upgrade from Metal Gear Solid 1 in terms of just sheer technological power and efficiency, right? I am not so hot on the localization. I mentioned in the previous video that I only really like, or in the previous video, but the previous MP3 about Metal Gear Solid 1, which is a couple of MP3s ago now, I think. But yeah, in the Metal Gear Solid 1 MP3, I did mention that I only like David Hayter in the Metal Gear Solid 1 dub. I only like David Hayter's Snake in the Metal Gear Solid 1 dub. I don't know how much of that is the fact that his performance was different and better back then, and how much of it is the fact that his voice was superimposed on drawings and a PS1 mesh character with no mouth, or a mouth that didn't move. That might have been a factor. It might have given him more leeway. I suspect it's probably a combination of the two. I think the performance was better, and I think that the medium, or the style of Metal Gear Solid 1 helped. So I think that both were factors, but I do think that mainly the performance in 2 is different, where he is aiming to make Snake a little more gravelly, give him more of like a deep, badass voice. And Hader just does not have that voice. Like, you can go and listen to his listen to like a David Hayter reel on YouTube of all the different voices that he's done.
You see, heroism goes along with my job.
I could claim to be Napoleon. How would you prove I'm not?
Don't blame me, Mirai. I made an accurate calculation. It's in the nature of the Moldiver.
What's wrong, darling? We've gone out several times, and no matter what we do, you always seem to be somewhere else.
And it's always like this, like, standard, middle of the road voice, right? He's not like a nasally, past-sounding guy, but he's also not a gravelly, badass guy. Like, he's no, James Earl Jones or other guys who have deep voices. I mean, Kiefer Sutherland is an obvious example, let's be fair. Morgan Freeman or Vin Diesel or whatever, right? He doesn't have a deep voice. And so when he does the deep voice for Snake, it doesn't sound like anybody's voice. It just sounds like somebody doing a voice. It's like that like, Psycho Mantis, infinite ammo. Like, it's like,
we can leave behind much more than just DNA. Through speech, music, literature, and movies, what we've seen, heard, felt, anger, joy, and sorrow. These are the things I will pass on. That's what I live for.
I could do it a little better if my voice was more in order, but yeah, it's like, Hader's range is not that dissimilar from mine in terms of like the center of the range, right? Obviously, his range is much wider than mine because he is far more skilled as an actual trained voice actor. I'm not taking that away from him. I think he's a pretty good voice actor based on the samples that I've heard on YouTube. But when he does that Snake voice, and there are a few fantasy games where he does the Snake voice for those, and it just does not sound good.
Listen, stay along the tracks. Keep your eyes open for the old bear. If you see him, hide.
It's like the male equivalent of Stephanie Shea's Moe voice. Where if you listen to Stephanie Shea, she has so many roles like Yui in K-On! And Mikuru in Haruhi, where she has this fucking phony, put on, like, what's going on? Where is everyone? Like, just this fucking horrible, phony voice. That's not her voice. It's not anybody's voice. It's like a voice that someone can do, right? Like the fucking, like the Stitch voice or something. You know what I mean? I'm not going to attempt to do the Stitch voice. But, or the Gollum voice from Lord of the Rings. God, I hate, the voice of Gollum in those Lord of the Rings movies. They're great movies besides that, but yeah, no, thank you. But yeah, so let's hear some Stephanie Shea to contrast that with Snake.
Where am I? Why did you bring me here? Who are you people anyway?
So yeah, it's really unfortunate. People give it a free pass because they grew up with it. And I understand a lot of the community of people who like dubs generally are people who are not interested in learning language, and or they like getting the vicarious enjoyment of the localizers having fun adapting the content rather than doing a good job at being invisible and presenting the original piece of art as clearly as possible with as little noise, right? This is definitely an MP3 that is in the works, by the way. I'm going to do an MP3 on how localization should not be art. And yeah, it's unfortunate. I understand where the appeal lies in a way, but it just fucking ruins it for me, man. And until you're fluent in Japanese, it's just a package deal. You'd better love that, like, American sauce that they don't have to add, but they do. I mean, it's not even American sauce. It's just like the sauce of the localizers. It's not even really about a specific culture. It's just they decided to change things or to use things that aren't congruent, you know? And that's just the way it is. The only solution is to just become fluent in Japanese because that stuff is very profitable and it's not going away. No ill wishes for fucking Hater, right? I think he was a little, like, not so classy how he reacted to being recast in 5. But besides that, I don't really have a problem with the guy. I just hate his Solid Snake. That's all. I'm sure that I looked up his voice credits and I couldn't find anything that I had seen him in, but I'm sure that he's excuse me. I'm sure he's fine. I'm sure he based on the clips that I've heard, does a good job. Also, Raiden only sucks in the English dub. This is another Solid is more of a problem for me, or I guess Snake, because the obviously Naked Snake, who is Big Boss and not Solid, has the same problem in Metal Gear Solid 3. But but yeah, Raiden, his English dub voice, he sounds like such a fucking sissy, and it's so weird. It's like in the Japanese, he's still a pretty boy, right? I mean, the president, like, grabs his balls because he thinks he's a lady, right? I can't remember if he trips and falls and grabs his balls, or if he's trying to sexually harass the supposed lady in his cell. I forget. But anyway, yeah, so that joke is in the Japanese too. So Raiden is a pretty boy, but he's not a sissy. He has, like, a deep voice, right? But, like, in the dub, they gave him this, like, fucking, like sissy, high-pitched, nasally Team America voice. Like, how many times do I have to tell you? I don't know what day it is. It's like, I wish I could do it better. My voice is so fucked today. But yeah, it's unfortunate. And once again, it's more likely the creative directors or the ADR director's fault, not the actor. Same goes for Hater. I don't think I explicitly said that 99 times out of 100, if you have a problem with a dub, it's probably the ADR director's fault. If not him, probably the casting director. And if somehow not them, then maybe the actor. But the actor is usually, like, third in line at best when it comes to assigning blame. Yeah, so the choice of voice for Raiden, horrible. You can listen to the Japanese. He has a deep, Japanese badass voice. Just a normal Japanese guy, or normal Japanese soldier guy voice, right? It's just, you know.
ローズ、データアナリストとして調べてもらいたいことがある。
何？
ソリッドスネークのことだ。今回のテロリストのボスがそう名乗ってる。
伝説の傭兵ね。
彼の詳細データが欲しい。シャドウモセス事件の後どうなったか。
He sounds good, you know? He's like a pretty boy with a deep voice, and he kicks ass and stuff. And I'm not even the biggest Raiden fan. I just, like, it was such a bad choice by the localizers, because the rug pull, I actually hadn't really thought about the fact that it could have been, like, some sort of, like, a spiteful choice to cast Raiden in a more sissy way because they wanted Hater to have a bigger role. I don't know. That's not even a fucking conspiracy theory. That's just, I realized it's a possible hypothesis. I have no fucking evidence for that, or any specific reason to suspect it, but that did stick out to me. Hater's dropped a few hints about how he thought it was dumb back in the day, which, again, is weird, right? It's like, I don't know. But yeah, so Raiden sounds way better in sub. I probably played a clip of that already, so we can just fucking move on, because point made. I wish I could play the Metal Gear Solid, the first 4 games. I wish I could play them in sub. I mean, ideally, honestly, I would just take... No, I wouldn't even say redub them. That'd be too weird. But yeah, I want to play the first 4 in sub. Can't yet. There have been rumors with Delta coming out. There have been many rumors that we might get the original trilogy on Steam. Somehow I doubt they're going to give us the original Snake Eater with the remake coming. But man, if I could play the first 3 in sub, I would probably hand over some money for that. But yeah, anyway. Second super bullet is mechanics. The controls for this game are in a very odd liminal space. I think that my favorite of the two, my favorite gameplay of the first 2 games is early Metal Gear Solid 1, where you have the bird's eye view plus the Soliton radar to scan out farther than the screen can see, and you can move with the D-pad, and it feels very nice. And like pressing up against walls and stuff. Oh wait, can you use the D-pad in Metal Gear Solid 2? I don't remember. But the levels are more like robust in Metal Gear Solid 2, where especially later in the game. But yeah, I still think that Metal Gear Solid 1 overhead view with the D-pad, that was the perfect scope for this like overhead plus first-person hybrid gameplay. Excuse me. We're like Metal Gear Solid 2. You could like it's beginning of a transitory state from Metal Gear Solid 1, the early stuff, right? Especially from Metal Gear Solid 1 to the Phantom Pain, right? Metal Gear Solid 2 is sort of a transitional state, and it definitely has like some growing pains, I think, where there are more mechanics. You have more cool shit you can do that's great and strictly better. I love the lockers. I think that the ledge hanging is fun. And lots of other small things about Metal Gear Solid 2 I think are a lot of fun. I do think that making the weapon aiming more robust while leaving in that third person plus first person switching back and forth kind of vibe, and also having the levels be more open, particularly after in the on the big shell, right? You definitely have more open level design, and there's a lot of like popping in and out of first person that just kind of feels annoying. It's not like unplayable, but it just doesn't feel very solid. No pun intended. Definitely feels like that's in like a. Did I already say that it's a sort of in like a liminal space, sort of, right? And yeah, it's not the worst, but I do think that it's less less cohesive, more robust and less cohesive, which is a common trade-off you see, especially in sequels, right? But yeah, I think that getting the I will take one step into Metal Gear Solid 3 for a second to say I think that a subsistence style camera would help Metal Gear Solid 2 a lot. I would love to see that. Have the subsistence style modernized third person camera in Metal Gear Solid 2. I think that would help this game a lot, because being able to walk around and like see maybe you have to change. I'm sure someone would have nitpicks about that thought, about how you'd have to change the level design. In which case, I'd say, good, change it. Like that would have been interesting to have. I'm not saying revise the game. I'm just saying, if I were making this game and I had the option to include the subsistence camera the first time, I definitely would have done that, I think. Other mechanics like just little things where like the sword controls are bad. It's just 4 buttons, up, down, left, right, but they're mapped to an analog stick, and it feels horrible. The animations are questionable. I don't like the sword. It's fun if you hit a guy, right? But it's just like, it's really janky, and I'm not a big fan. This is a problem in the first game as well, but rations really should auto-equip if you have 0 and pick one up while no item is selected in R2. Or just leave your 0 rations selected until you switch to another item, right? There are a lot of boss battles in this game where on the easier difficulties, when you run, it spawns rations for you, but if you use your last one and go pick a ration up, you have to remember to re-equip your rations, or you'll accidentally die. And I don't think it happened to me even one time in Metal Gear Solid 2, but the fact that I was, but even just in the doing it, in the equipping it every time, where I played on easy. Metal Gear Solid 1 and 2 are not fun when they are difficult. I don't find the difficulty in those games enjoyable. It's just memorization. If you want to mix up the games after playing them so many times, I get that, but yeah, I played on easy both times. It was the perfect difficulty. I did not go down to very easy. Easy was perfect. So like in the Solidus fight, I used a lot of rations, right? And I think I had to re-equip my rations like 3 or 4 times in that fight. And it's just like, why don't they just auto-equip if I have nothing equipped? Because it only creates 2 possibilities. One, you annoy me by having to equip my rations, which is obviously what I want if I have no items equipped and I'm running over to my ration. Or I forget and I'm killed and have to reload because I forgot to equip. Like, is that really a mechanic so important that we want to force resets for? Again, these are smaller, more nitpicky things, but they do noticeably affect the experience for me because interfacing stuff really stands out to me. And yeah, I guess that's actually all that I have for... Is it all that I have for mechanics? Did I specifically say that I like the lockers a lot? The shooting is a little janky, but it's an interesting addition. Everything feels very robust. Lots of dialogue. So, well, actually, like the mainline dialogue, like just running around and doing shit, I kind of felt like running around and using the codec all the time, it felt like there were less general prompts than in Metal Gear Solid 1. That may or may not be true. But I feel like a lot of times when I was running around, like just walk into a room, be like, what do they think about this? They didn't really have anything to say sometimes. Where in Metal Gear Solid 1, it felt like they always had something to fucking say. In this game, everyone felt like... I think I commented on how Nastasha seemed a little less robust than the other characters in Metal Gear Solid 1. And in Metal Gear Solid 2, the characters felt a little closer to Nastasha in terms of robustness. That might be false. And that also might be some overlap with Metal Gear Solid 3, where this feeling is even more pronounced. But it does have other kinds of robustness that make up for it in some ways. Like just all the little Easter eggs, like how you can send Otacon pictures of weird things on the tanker. I appreciate that. But yeah, anyway, let's move on to the story and characters. I think the crazy ending stuff is pretty cool. I like that a lot. Everyone loves the GW monologue, right? Like, obviously, it's cool stuff. I love the tone. I think that the use of sound and the dreamlike atmosphere that they create is very fun. They're very obviously trying to make you unsure about what is real and what is not. And it feels like they accomplish that without needing to be too cheaty, As mentioned before, the story is complete and utter fucking nonsense. It has very little unambiguous meaning. I can't remember if I said that explicitly yet or not. The S3 plan being a recreation of Shadow Moses is the dumbest shit in the world. It doesn't make any sense. With so many factors being different, the butterfly effect would completely demolish any possible benefit from constructing it so completely with all these, like AliExpress versions of the original Shadow Moses factors. Many things in Metal Gear Solid 2 feel like they're deliberately muddy in order to specifically allow multiple interpretations. That really just feels like it's kind of how Kojima works, where the games are just like if you think of someone like Tarantino, I would, when I think about Tarantino's writing style, he's more of like an architect, right? And maybe you like his tone, maybe not, but I think it's hard to deny that he puts a lot of careful thought into the structure and the congruency of his stories, right? It doesn't even matter if you like them or not. That's just his style. You can dislike his style and still understand that that's true. But Kojima is more like, his stuff is more like soup or gumbo, right? Or he just puts the good shit in there, and then he just kind of like wraps a cord around it all, and it's some really fucking sweet ingredients, but he doesn't think about it too hard. You know what I mean? Like, it's just nonsense. And yeah, many of the things in this game feel like they were deliberately muddy, just so you could kind of project what you want to be true onto them. Like Misfortune is lucky, except she's not, because she actually got her luck, supposed luck, from that device from Ocelot. Except at the end, it turns out she is lucky. So it's like, what the hell was any of that for? You know. Quick little insert here from about an hour later. I'm currently listening to the recording and just making sure everything came together. I forgot to mention that as another example of muddiness is how the start of the game you have that big rug pull where you think you're going to be playing as the badass Solid Snake, and then you end up playing as Raiden, the rookie, instead. And that's like a deliberate, like, a deliberate rug pull, right? But then at the end, it turns out that he's not a rookie. He's actually like a very experienced killer called Jack the Ripper, right? And so it's like, what are they trying to say with that exactly, right? It's not clear. I'm not even saying it's bad. It's just kind of like, okay, I don't know what you were going for, but cool. Like I snuck around and I shot some guys. That was all right. Anyway, back to the original recording. And all these, we don't even need to talk about how Dead Cell are pretty much just boring and shitty. Vamp and Fat Man are kind of workable, where I could see how those two could be the start of an interesting motley crew, right? But it's kind of like having, like, I can't even say Psycho Mantis, because Psycho Mantis was so good. He could have been... But yeah, anyway, like Vulcan Raven, right? Vulcan Raven is fine. Just like how Fat Man and the other one. What was the other one? Oh, fuck me. Vamp. Vamp, that's what it was. Yeah. Fat Man and Vamp. They're fine. Not amazing, but they're a start for a decent ensemble. Fortune was mostly just annoying. She was always just like fucking melodramatic. And then her story ended up just being fucking like caked in mud and whatever. I did not like that at all. Olga was kind of weird for me, where I liked her at the beginning, but then making her a cyborg ninja just felt weird. It's like the cyborg ninja thing doesn't really suit Olga based on her aesthetic and her story, but we had to do the cyborg ninja thing because we're doing the S3 plan. So yeah, it's all just weird and muddy. And generally speaking, I liked the story and characters much less than Metal Gear Solid 1. Even though Metal Gear Solid 1 was nonsense, I still appreciated the tone more. I liked Psycho Mantis a lot more than any of the Dead Cell guys. And Revolver Ocelot, obviously, had a more personal role, or you got to actually fight him, and he felt a little more like an actual combatant instead of like a mastermind. I don't really like Ocelot as much as a mastermind. I think he's more interesting when he's making trouble more directly. Like, he's not a grunt, but I like him being more directly dangerous instead of bossing around the lesser guys. But yeah. Let's see. What do my notes here say? The story's all over the place. The story is so all over the place, you could interpret it to mean basically anything, and many people have. Yeah. And yes, I said that. Yeah, I guess that's most of it, really, honestly. Yeah, good game overall. I like this game. Metal Gear Solid 2. It's very nice. I think that people who call it like a magnum opus or this mind-blowing, brilliant, once-in-a-lifetime game are seriously fucking like they're really fucking distorted, man. Yeah, I don't think so at all. I do not think that it has some... I mean, it is a very nice game. It has a lot of very nice elements to it. But it is a mixed bag, and it is muddy, which is, that's sort of becoming a pattern. I'm already kind of getting, I get a very strong feeling I'm going to be saying a lot of similar things from Metal Gear Solid 3, just how these early games are. It's how a lot of cutting edge things are, right? A lot of the time you have like you can maybe apply this to lots of fields. Let's just say in this scope of entertainment specifically, a lot of times you have like innovators, and then you have like crystallizers, right? Where a lot of times people come along and make something groundbreaking that's maybe less entertaining, and then people come behind, like Citizen Kane's a good example, where it has so much important technical shit in it, right, in terms of movie making. And you can watch like a documentary about Citizen Kane, and it's so interesting. But if you just sit down and watch Citizen Kane with no context, with no historical information provided, it's not that entertaining. It's not a timeless movie, where there are other movies that are similarly old that are more entertaining, I think. This may or may not be a good example. I don't know. I'm kind of losing my shit here. And I guess that's it. Thanks for listening. I'm still playing Metal Gear Solid 3. In fact, when I hang up on this, or when I stop this recording, and I upload it, I'm probably going to go play a little Metal Gear Solid 3. And, yeah. It is May 31st, 2023 at 4:27 p.m. My name is Jim, and I hope you have a good day.